Good evening and welcome to Under the Hood. It is good to be back on Wednesday, November 15th. I'm Eli Karp, your host of Under the Hood and editor-in-chief of Throw the Flag Sports. Along with me tonight, we have Matt and Spentano. So crew of three tonight. And this is about our first time back in nearly a month. We've taken a bit of a break, been busy lately, but a lot has happened, and a lot is going to happen very soon. So we want to catch up on all of it and get you prepared. We're going to talk about some college football tonight. So much has happened. And believe it or not, conference championship games are in just a few weeks, and right the day after that, the college football playoff field will be set. So that is in full force right now. College basketball Champions Classic yesterday. We are in the first week of the season. I think it started last Thursday. So here we go. College basketball lovers can rejoice. Talk a little bit of NFL. Same old NFL. Still interesting stuff. Teams suck even more than they did a few weeks ago. Some teams are better than they were a few weeks ago. That's basically the gist. Brady hasn't retired yet. Jimmy Garoppolo was traded. The Giants lost again. And we actually haven't even been here. Well, before I go on to that, Zeke was suspended, then unsuspended, then suspended, and unsuspended, and finally suspended, and he will not appeal. So the NFL has, and Roger Goodell, they have won this one after it looked for a while like they would have another, some PR suicide going on there in Manhattan. We have not been on to talk about the World Series, so we may touch on that a little bit. Having Houston get one back for all the hardships they've gone through in the last couple of months. This was a nice little win for them, although it was only after that was Deshaun Watson sent down with a torn ACL, which pretty much ended any more hopes for the Houston sports season, although we'll see what James Harden, Chris Paul, and the Rockets can do. And then the NBA. Speaking of the Rockets, we're going to dive in. We're about three weeks in, I'd say, the NBA season. Interesting stuff. So we'll get to all of it, but let's go back to the top of the list and start with college football. So much has happened, and Matt, I want to get your thoughts on it.
Okay, so with this week's college football rankings or playoff rankings, it's pretty obvious that what the committee's saying is if everybody wins out, which is a huge if, obviously, with how crazy this season has been, it's going to come down to Wisconsin is going to replace the ACC runner-up, is basically like what they said with these most recent rankings. And I was honestly really surprised that they chose to put Clemson over Miami. Because I really think that Miami's win over Notre Dame, even though, it was obviously a blowout, and I thought that earned Miami the number 2 ranking, but we'll see. I think there's a lot of teams that are up in the top that we just don't know about yet. Alabama, they're obviously, after their struggles this week, Clemson struggled this past week. Really the only teams that cruised were Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Miami in the top 5. So it's really going to be interesting coming down the stretch especially for Wisconsin. They're finally going to face what I think is a tough test for them this week in Michigan. And then eventually, if they win that, or eventually the Big Ten East champion. So we'll see.
Yeah, Wisconsin's only path in is to be undefeated and win the Big Ten championship. They just haven't played. One, it's tough to get in if you're not a conference champion. And two, they have not played a tough enough schedule. They will have not played a tough enough schedule to get them in with a one-loss record. It's just not conceivable. That's why they've earned such little respect from people, and they're only garnering a little bit of it now because they've made it to double-digit wins with no losses. The question really will be, which Ohio State team is going to show up in Indianapolis? All signs point to it being a Wisconsin-Ohio State Big Ten championship. Is it going to be the Ohio State that showed up and got blown out by 31 at Iowa, a team that Wisconsin then gave up 66 total yards to and beat by 24, although it should have been more because the only offense Iowa had was their defense, 2 pick sixes of Alex Wardenbrook, who right now is the Badgers' Achilles heel. So are they going to get the Ohio State team that got blown out of Iowa, or are they going to get the team that just absolutely pummeled Michigan State 48-3 and made the number 12 team in the country look like the number 120th team in the country? That's really going to be the question, assuming they take care of business with Michigan. Again, it's another thing to add to their resume, ranked team. If they win, Michigan's had the benefit of flying under the radar after their slow-ish start.
Mhm.
And I guess they're really, I wouldn't say they're underperforming season. They had so much of a roster turnover. They could still make it to 10 wins in a decent bowl game. Likely not a New Year's Six, but still a decent bowl game. That could be a resume pattern if Wisconsin is to win that. And then Minnesota, they should handle the Gophers. So they should, in theory, have everything on the table for them and everything in front of them um, come the Big Ten championship, because you cannot, in my mind, the College Football Playoff Committee cannot leave out an undefeated conference champion, no matter their schedule. It is a Power Five conference. You went undefeated, you won a conference championship, you should be in. So we'll go a little more into that. Aside from Wisconsin, Spentano, why don't you get your thoughts before that?
Well, yeah, the Pac-12 kind of like shot themselves in the foot because they're all pretty much screwed. And how complicated does it get if Alabama loses the Iron Bowl? How does
Auburn.
it?
You mean Auburn?
No, Alabama losing
yeah.
the Iron Bowl to Auburn.
Oh, yeah. So if Auburn were to win.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that complicates things insanely right now. Here's how I'm looking at it. You have right now Alabama, Clemson, Miami, Oklahoma, Wisconsin. Georgia is 7th. They took a big dive. But honestly, this means so little to Georgia with regards to getting in. Maybe their seeding in the top 4, if they were to get in, that would have been different. But regardless, they would have had to win the SEC championship to get in, because in all likelihood, the winner of that game is going to the playoff, unless it's possibly Auburn. But in any case, if Georgia is to be 12-0 or 11-1 and an SEC champion, that's the same deal to get in, as long as they're taking one team. If Auburn is to if they beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl and they win the SEC West, and then they beat Georgia, well, one, Georgia's out of it. They're a 2-loss non-conference champion. We've basically seen 2-loss teams that's like the kiss of death. But this would be a very interesting conversation, because you have Alabama and Georgia out of the running. Do you replace do you replace that spot with a 2-loss conference champion? And those 2 losses are pretty good. One came to Clemson in a pretty tight game on the road, and I think the other came at LSU in a game which they really played well in the first half. So those are 2 good losses. It will be very interesting if it comes to that. Again, they would have to win out and then beat Georgia in the SEC championship, if the committee were really to consider that. The same thing with Ohio State. They're in a similar position as Auburn. They're a 2-loss team, but they're considered 2 good loss teams. They're both going to be they have the chance to be playing in their conference championship games and possibly win their conferences. And they would take out the people, the teams they would be playing. So they would take out Wisconsin. They would take out Alabama and Georgia. So those are 2 spots. And then you have Clemson, Miami, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, as long as they don't screw up, they should be in. I think for my money, I think they have the easiest path in. Or like more simple. I think they have the easiest path in. And then the winner of Clemson, Miami, I think that they're going to represent the ACC. But I don't see any other team besides, you could say anyone in the top 9 besides Notre Dame. In my opinion, Notre Dame has no shot, because there's no conference championship to be played for them. They have 2 losses. There is frankly no chance. So I'd say any one of them in the top 9, save Notre Dame, right now has a chance. I think it'll end up being, I don't know, Alabama, Georgia could be a toss-up right now, especially because it's a neutral field in Atlanta. Come to that game, assuming they both win out. We've seen really crazy things happen in the Iron Bowl. I think was it 4 years ago?
Chris Davis.
The kick six.
Yeah,
I think
that's.
it was 4 years ago.
Is it at Auburn? I think it might be at Auburn.
It is at Auburn, so that
that's
only adds to the storyline.
I really think
The 4-year anniversary of the kick six, what I think is probably the best ending of a college football game all time, considering contextualization and just the magnitude of everything. So that, again, very interesting. We'll see how it all shakes out. I'm sure next week, who knows? We saw a couple weeks ago, all of these ranked teams went down, and that shook up the playoff, and when you least expect it. So you don't know. It may not be a rivalry week that really shifts things up. We'll have to see. That's the great thing about college football. Any other points on the college football playoff? Otherwise, we're going to move on to basketball.
UCF.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised how is UCF still 15th? Like, they deserve some respect.
Well, but who have they played? Let's see who they played. I understand they're 9-0, but they play what, in the American?
I mean, this undefeated is hard, no matter what league you're in.
Undefeated is hard.
Northern Iowa, or was it Northern Iowa a few years ago with who was it? Jordan Lynch, yeah, the quarterback.
Northern Illinois.
Oh, Northern Illinois, yeah. They were 12-0, but then they just got throttled.
Yeah, they're in the American. They've beaten. Wait for this. They've beaten Florida International. 2 games. Actually, they've had 3 games that were canceled: Georgia Tech, Memphis, and Maine. 2 of those games could actually have helped boost their resume.
Well, no, they beat Memphis.
They beat. No, so it was canceled.
They did.
They might have. Yeah, they played that game. They rescheduled it.
Yeah, they rescheduled it.
Well, there's a little bit of resume booster. They beat Maryland. They beat Memphis. Oh yeah, they did beat Memphis here. They beat Cincinnati. They beat East Carolina. They beat Navy. They beat Austin Peay. They beat SMU and UConn. Besides Memphis, show me a good team.
Yeah.
UConn has a good basketball program.
They do. They do, and I don't think UCF does.
But I think Michael Jordan's kid went to UCF. I think.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if any of that rubs off. I don't know if it has so far.
I mean, I think that the fact that they canceled their game against Georgia Tech. I mean, obviously it was because of the hurricane, but that really hurt them because that could have been a big win on their resume. Because I mean, Georgia Tech is 5-4, but Georgia Tech is still the team. Like, if you beat Georgia Tech, it's a good win no matter what. I mean,
they're a solid Power 5 team.
Yeah.
There were a couple games. There were some really great matchups last weekend that just did not turn out to be good games.
Yeah.
Really, the best one was Mississippi State, Alabama, and Alabama's weakness at linebacker through injuries. Obviously not through talent, but through injuries. That showed a little bit. Going on the road, a tough Mississippi State team on the road. They really they could have won that game, and they really they crumbled at the end. Unfortunately, I always like to see when Alabama goes down. But in any case, Alabama proved their mettle, as they always seem to do, and they came away with a win, and they are still in the hunt. Not that they wouldn't have been in the hunt.
I really think Auburn will beat them. I think Auburn will beat them at home.
We'll have to see. Jarrett Stidham has been playing really good football.
How can you really deny Auburn a spot if they just beat Georgia twice and then Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be.
Well, that's really the thing. Assuming if you're from the other teams that make it in, you would have if in this scenario, if Wisconsin were to make it in, if the ACC winner, because I don't think the ACC runner-up, I don't think is getting in. Although you'll have to compare it.
Well, I think that if Miami loses,
the question might be is an ACC runner-up better? Where do they land against a very good 2-loss champion? And the same thing might have to be said for an Ohio State. Yeah. Ohio State and Auburn are in very, very similar situations, except that I think Auburn has a better schedule. They have better losses and they have better signature wins than Ohio State does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Auburn's in over Ohio State every time if they both win out.
They should, but again, we'll see how it shakes out. So that's college football for the night. College basketball last night, Champions Classic. You had Duke versus Michigan State. Duke pulling out a 7-point win. It was an entertaining game. From what I heard, I didn't get a chance to watch much of it, but it sounded like all talent was on display. Duke, again, proving their pedigree. They're going to be the consensus number 1. They're the team to beat at this point. albeit it's the first week of the college basketball season. And in the second game, a very young Kentucky team, which, although ranked in the top 10, has drawn comparisons to the very young team. It's always young, but the very young Kentucky team that made the NIT, only the NIT. They missed the NCAA tournament, I think, 2012-2013 season. So we will see. It's always a work in progress in the early part of the season in Lexington under John Calipari. But they did give Kansas, who was projected to be a very good team, a championship contender as usual, but some years are a little more down than up for Kansas. Kentucky gave them a really good run. Kansas only won by 4. Other teams you want to take a look at, the Big Ten. Once again, going to be a very it's going to be a weak year for the Big Ten. If I'm being honest, I mean, besides Michigan State, who comes after them? Michigan will probably be decent. Michigan is ranked. Northwestern is ranked for the first time in forever. That's exciting to hear for any Wildcat fans or just people looking for a team to get behind. They are that team.
If you're watching the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Or anyone at ESPN.
Minnesota is ranked 14th in the country.
Exactly. Yeah, Minnesota's back. Minnesota's actually an underdog pick to win the Big Ten from some. But so those are 4 teams. But Minnesota's not the team. They haven't won the Big Ten in 20 years. They're not the team that you usually Northwestern and Minnesota, not the teams you usually expect to be talking about when it comes to the Big Ten basketball runners. The Wisconsins, the Marylands. That's really you'd expect to add them to. And in the Indiana, oh God, Indiana's a mess right now. They got killed by Indiana State. They're down big to Seton Hall. What is going on with Archie Miller and the Hoosiers? They are Purdue. Purdue's going to be a solid team. Maybe not like last year, but they're going to be a solid team. So maybe I take back the overarching statement that the Big Ten is going to be weak, but it's not loaded. It's a lot of decent teams at the top. There's just, aside from Michigan State, everyone else is going to kind of be clumped in middle to the back of the AP Top 25 for those that are ranked, and then after that, all hell breaks loose, and they probably stink.
Well, yeah, it seems like this happens every year with the Big Ten. Like, they'll have, well, this year they only have 1, but usually they'll have like 2 or 3 teams ranked like in the top 15, and then everybody else will just be like middle of the pack. But the thing about the Big Ten is every night, like the worst team in the conference can beat the best team. Like, that's just not something you see. That's not something you see in the ACC. Like, Duke is always going to beat Wake, probably. Well, actually, maybe not, because that's Wake. That's Wake's Super Bowl. So,
yeah. Just I'm going down the one article with power rankings here on ESPN. Wichita State, after last year's run, there was a thought that they could be really good coming in this year, and they have, they're garnering the attention for that. They're ranked 5th in one of these power rankings. Landry Shamet, Marcus McDuffie, they're out right now, but they're going to be playing a tougher schedule than usual because they've now moved to the American. But with this talent, and I love Greg Marshall as a coach. I think he's a fantastic coach, especially when the season comes around to March and it becomes a tournament, really a tournament game. Greg Marshall is a fantastic coach in the NCAA tournament. I think they can win the American, flat out. I think they're the best team there right now. They were top 10 in Ken Pomeroy's like offensive efficiency rankings, even though their RPI during the schedule was down in the dumpster. USC, when's the last time we've heard USC being thought of as a top basketball school? Not that I can remember.
They had Scalabrini a few years ago.
Of course, but that's again, I'm not going to remember that.
Well, when you have the best player in the country, you got a chance.
Exactly, and the best color announcer in the NBA. So what else we got here? Cincinnati could challenge. They could challenge Wichita State in the American. Other than that,
that's really all the American.
Big East, they're gonna have a few. Again, Villanova's gonna be their pride and joy, but then Xavier and Seton Hall are gonna be good, solid teams.
UVM,
Providence, we'll see.
UVM is coming. I'm telling you.
What'd you say?
I said UVM is coming.
UVM is coming. Yeah, they lost to Kentucky by 4 in a very close road game.
They battled back. They were down like 20.
They certainly did. So any predictions you guys want to make for college basketball, any things to look for before we move on?
Well, I think it's really impressive that Duke won without Bagley for like most of that game because he got poked in the eye and then he just didn't play. I think that was probably the most impressive part. Like that I'm not sure what the score was when he got injured, but they really they stayed composed and were able to get the win without Bagley, who's probably their best player.
Yeah,
Well,
although at the same time, it's not like when Bagley goes out, they're taking one of us three off the bench. They're putting in 5-star and blue chip recruits from everywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
So I understand Marvin Bagley is a special talent, and he is probably going to be in the consideration at this point. Many mock drafts have him in consideration for a number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft this coming spring. Yes, he's a loss, but look at who they're bringing off the bench.
Well, I think for Michigan State, it was really disappointing for Bridges, Malcolm Bridges. I mean, he's getting talked as probably the player of the year. And I mean, don't get me wrong, 19 points is obviously like great for a player, but if you're getting talked about as player of the year, you need to be having like usually player of the year average is over 20 points. And like in that big of a game, he just didn't step up like I thought he would. Like I thought he'd be a lot more assertive.
Yeah, in the first half he was definitely more passive than he should have been. And then I think it was towards the beginning of the second half, he just kind of had this toe-to-toe battle with Grayson Allen.
Yeah.
Like, they both just run down and make threes. And that was pretty cool. So I think he has the ability to take over when he wants to, but he was trying to get his team more involved towards the beginning. But yeah, he's got to be more.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the early season tournaments. Now they're starting to pick up. You have the Champions Classic. The Garden has a bunch of them. They're more scattered around the country, but you'll see these teams. This is some of the early season great matchups. You're not going to see a few, more of those until conference play really starts. So again, it's very early. You can't judge too much off of this. But who else does Michigan State have besides Miles Bridges?
Well, last night they had
what's his name? Ward?
Yeah,
Ward played great.
Jackson, right? Jackson was good.
Oh, what's their point guard's name? It's
I'm looking.
Do they still have Tum Tum Nairn? Because I love that name.
I don't think they do.
Oh God, that was one of my favorite names from last year's tournament.
They do.
Having Kevin Harlan say Tum Tum Nairn, it was wonderful. Every time he would go up for a rebound. And then they had Goins, another interesting name.
They still have Schilling.
Oh, they have Jaren Jackson Jr. He's pretty good.
I feel like Schilling has been there for 10 years.
Oh yeah, Cassius Winston or Cassius.
Cassius Winston. Yep, that rings a bell. Well, you know who was in Kansas for years? Perry Ellis was a Kansas Jayhawk for about 9 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy just wouldn't leave. I don't know how he was frankly eligible because I feel like I've grown up my entire life watching the guy play in a Kansas uniform.
Yeah.
And this guy, he kind of looks like it too. He's like balding, so it only adds to the effect, really.
I think he was like 27. That's the thing.
I would believe it. That is something that I would latch onto. Any other points to make about college basketball? We're going to move on to talk.
Just kidding. He's 24.
Pigskin.
Just kidding. He's 24. I was wrong.
He's 24. That's still pretty old.
Right? I'm pretty sure I just assumed that he was 27 because of his receding hairline.
Yeah.
Even at 27, you shouldn't have a receding hairline. But
you could possibly confuse the Perry Ellis, the basketball player, with like Perry Ellis, the clothes designer, because of the way they look. So that's it for college basketball for now. We'll get to that next time. We'll still be talking it. It's only the beginning. The NFL. We've missed a few weeks now. This is week 11 coming up. Week 11 is coming up. Can you believe that? It's going to be week 11. It's already mid-November. That's crazy enough. The bad. We'll start with the bad. The Giants. Oh, God, they're bad. They are so bad. I really won't spend too much time besides the fact that, okay, I understand they won't fire McAdoo until the end of the season. For whatever reason they're doing it, it's the smart move. One, because it's just the way they operate. And two, he sucks so much that they're going to lose out and get a better pick than going 4-12 or 5-11 and somehow rattling a few more wins off. So whatever it is, fine. Get the pick, whatever you know. But the real issue is Jerry Reese, because this guy swing and a whiff on some of his draft picks. So whatever it comes to, even if they're given a high pick, they always seem to somehow shift things up that isn't quite the right decision. And face it, Eli's only going to go out when McAdoo goes out, because that's the only reason they got McAdoo, so that Eli at, 36 years old, wouldn't have to learn a new offensive system to throw these next few years away. He's got 2 years, I think, left on his contract. He is certainly not playing any more than that. I think he's got 1 year after this year left in him. I just don't see him retiring on such a low point like this. His career, while it is often overrated by some, this year is not indicative of his career, and it can't be. People can't let that fool them. Really, it hasn't been all of his fault. There's so much around him that's gone wrong. So that's the bad for the Giants. You know what team has fallen off the face of the earth ever since losing to the Giants? The Denver Broncos. My goodness. We thought they were headed to Minnesota after they shellacked the Cowboys in week 2, and now, boy, they're terrible. They just can't. Their defense, so much for having a good defense. Their defense has given up so much in the past few games. What are they doing at quarterback? Trevor Siemian is poor. Brock is, we already know how I feel about Brock Osweiler and how I don't know how he keeps getting chances in this league. That's ugly. What else is ugly? I won't even call the Niners ugly because they just won the Super Bowl on Sunday. So I won't call that ugly. What else is ugly? The Colts, they're kind of ugly, although they're always kind of ugly.
They have Brissett, though, and he's cool.
What?
Brissett is cool.
We do like Brissett.
I like Brissett. I feel like
Brissett has a future. He seems like he's grown up 5 years since last year when he had to start one game in Jimmy Garoppolo's absence during the Tom Brady suspension. Now this year, he is a hot commodity starter. He has grown up. Whether his stats are amazing or whatever, he is certainly, I think he has a future in this league. Finally,
go ahead. Roster's horrible. That roster's horrible. Like,
it's
playing with it forever, but he looks good, and he'll find a team somewhere. Probably like the Bengals or something. Andy Dalton sucks.
The Browns. I mean, the thing is, here's a little thing I wanted to say before, or just really, ever since everyone's talking about the Browns, they can't even manage to get the trade in correctly for A.J. McCarron at the deadline. They missed on Deshaun Watson. Well, let me ask you this. It doesn't seem like the player, specifically the quarterback, is always the issue when it comes to Cleveland. Deshaun Watson would not be the Deshaun Watson we saw this season in Houston if he was in Cleveland. It's the system in place. It's the culture. It's the players and coaches around the quarterback that really contribute with this entire aura of the garbage of Lake Erie that comes to make every Browns quarterback so bad. I don't think when people say, "Oh, they missed on Deshaun Watson, they would have had 3 wins by now, 4 wins by now." That's not the case. That just simply is not the case because plopping a player down into Cleveland, it just doesn't work like that. Deshaun Watson has weapons galore and a coach who knows what he's doing with quarterbacks down in Houston. And he's a pretty good defense there. For me, seeing that argument over the last few weeks, it's really a faulty comparison for me, Spentano.
I get the Browns are terrible, and they probably could have drafted Wentz or Watson and have maybe their friend, like you said, we don't know what they would be. Like, pretty much all sports. I don't know much about baseball. Well, I mean, I do know some about baseball, but like in baseball, I'm not sure if players are as systematic, but in basketball and football, players are definitely part of their system. Like, I don't think you'd see Steph Curry thriving the way he does on like the Orlando Magic, not being surrounded by anyone. Like Dak Prescott, I'm a huge Dak fan. He would not be what he is without the Cowboys. Players are completely systematic in football. And we don't know what those players would have been in Cleveland, but when they like had this thing where they're like, okay, we're just completely rebuilding. They didn't say they were going to win this year. They did not state that at all. They said we're going to win in like 5 years. We're trying to build something here. And a lot of those picks they've gotten from those trades out of the quarterback spots or getting a second for Brock Osweiler, they haven't came in yet. And I think come draft time, we're going to be like, the Browns have so many picks. What's going on? They're getting such good players. And it's it wasn't designed to win now. And I get like, oh, it's funny, the Browns suck, LOL. But they're not building for now. They're building for later, which it's kind of the Sam Hinkie approach, but whatever. The Browns fans are still going to love them.
While I see your logic there, and I was going to make the 76ers comparison if you didn't there, the problem is, while they have all of these picks, they just can't execute when it comes to drafting.
Yeah, but it's like, a new regime.
But
you don't know that.
It's
you don't know that yet.
LOL, they suck.
Cleveland.
I thought they had a actually pretty good draft this past year, but like they drafted well. But
what's Garrett done? I haven't really been paying attention to Garrett.
He's actually been pretty good. He was injured the first 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. But he's been somewhat productive since coming in.
Yeah, I saw he sacked Josh McCown on like his first play, and then that's all I've seen from him. But I don't know.
All right, a couple other quick teams I wanted to touch on, both in the NFC South, both looking like playoff contenders and possibly more. Who knew that we wouldn't be mentioning Atlanta, but Carolina and New Orleans. Interesting. Quick thoughts, Matt. You're going to talk about Carolina. Just so happens that you're from there. Spentano, I want to hear a little bit about New Orleans. What are your thoughts on the team, Matt?
Well, the Panthers started off bad because Cam Newton was hurt. Like, it was no secret he was playing hurt. What did he had a broken ankle like before the season or something. What was it, his wrist or
his
ankle?
Shoulder? His shoulder hurt.
That's what it was. But yeah, like I think that's the thing was Cam Newton was playing hurt, and then they came out after their terrible start and they were like, Cam Newton's finally healthy, and then they're winning, and Cam Newton's once again this awesome fantasy quarterback who's putting up like 25 a game. But I really think that's exactly what it was, and I really think that they really needed to trade Kelvin Benjamin because he was just really not performing in Carolina. I mean, Cam Newton, while Kelvin Benjamin was hurt, Devin Funchess became his favorite receiver, and he's not going to change that because Kelvin Benjamin comes back. And I really think the Panthers I think that they have a shot to I think they have a shot to make the playoffs and go far just because of Cam Newton. I mean, he's really back to the shape he was in when he won MVP 2 years ago.
Yeah, and the thing is, this offense was so shaky. They were field goal after field goal after field goal until a couple weeks ago, and now they've really started to explode. But that defense has been flying and absolutely solid throughout the entire season. There has been no letdown from them. And now, they're coming in their second wave are the Panthers, and they're a little more experienced. They bring a lot of players back from the Super Bowl team 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Super Bowl 50. And maybe in their second wave around, they have a little more maturity about them. Ron Rivera has been there before. Now Cam Newton, a lot of players have been there. Possibly will the maturity and the experience take over against another team that hasn't really been there should it come playoff time and they're in that position. That's interesting to see, or at least to think about. Spentano, New Orleans, and then we move on.
Well, I don't know if I tweeted this on @TheRealSpentano at the time, but when the Saints picked Marshawn Lattimore at 11, I thought that was the steal of the draft because I saw him going on like 5 on mock drafts, and then he just slipped and slipped and slipped, and he's been really, really, really good for them. And like this entire defense just seems revitalized. Like the Saints had Peterson and Adrian Peterson, and it just seemed like there was too much drama surrounding that, and then they trade him away, and then they go on a 7-game win streak. That works. And this isn't like the aired out Saints that we've seen that have gone 7-9 for the past like 5 years or whatever.
Alvin Kamara, this guy.
Yeah.
They ran for 6 touchdowns against Buffalo and scored 47 points, and Drew Brees threw 0 touchdowns. I don't think a single person would have said that was going to happen coming into the season. And then they beat Detroit in like the shootout of a lifetime, and Brees has like 10 fantasy points. Like he wasn't doing anything. And like it's just their defense being opportunistic, and they're running the football. and it's just working and clicking. And I really hope they like. The chances Cowboys make the playoffs are very, very small. So I'm kind of rooting for the Saints because I want Breeze to get one more before he goes.
Yeah, and that's why it's so interesting. Although the Saints have been slowly building their defense up, they've been so bad over the last few years that no one said, "Oh, they're really going to take the leap this year." And I'm still not all in on their defense. There's no reason to be with their history, but they haven't played in their 7-game win streak. They gave up a bunch of points. You saw they gave up low 36 to New England. They've given up a bunch of points in the beginning on their winning streak. They have not played an especially potent offense. Now, in the next few weeks, they're going to see a couple. Washington is not an easy test. I forget who else they have coming up, but it'll be very interesting, see what goes on in New Orleans. But yeah, frustrating for Breeze fantasy owners. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. There is a third in there. Is it? No, not Travaris Cadet. He's a Jet now.
Is Cadet? No.
No, he's a Jet.
Terry. No, that's not right.
I'm not sure.
No, he's a Bear.
I'm looking it up.
Why we can't? Because they have really a plethora of running back talent down there.
Is this
Adrian Peterson?
No, still without, because Adrian Peterson, he was the fourth. That was a real logjam. It's worked for him.
Daniel Lasco.
Really?
I think it might be a fullback.
And I know they cut John Kuhn, which is just absolutely, really a tragedy to the fans.
Trey Edmonds, is that it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let's take a quick look here. The New Orleans Saints. Who is the third running back that I think exists?
It's Lasco. I don't.
There's just another name, unless somehow it left.
He has
the guy
11
left.
carries for 32 yards. This
There is Trey Edmonds. Yep. Jonathan Williams hasn't got him. And Zach Line, Lasco. Yeah, it's Kamara, Ingram, and Edmonds. Really, they split a lot of carries. But they have a good offensive line. They have Michael Huomanawanui, and the fact that I can say that name is good enough that he's going to be a productive member of their team.
I mean, it's just like when Giannis Antetokounmpo got to superstardom, you were able to say his name, but like Huomanawanui.
No, it's not Huomanawanui. It's
Huomanawanui. Huomanawanui?
Yes, Huomanawanui.
He was on the Pats, right?
He was on the Patriots. Now he's a Saint. All right. Hopefully, playoff football can come back to New Orleans. It would be nice to see that dome become a real horror to play in for the opposing team. So that's the NFL today. Do we want to talk a bit about the World Series, or has it already been exhausted for us before we even decided to talk about it?
I think Cy Youngs were announced today.
Yes, awards have come out this week. Aaron Judge, Rookie of the Year. Cody Bellinger, Rookie of the Year.
Kluber won.
Yep.
AL. Who won NL? I didn't see.
Scherzer. Scherzer.
Okay. Yeah.
So those are the two Cy Youngs. Gold gloves have all been handed out, and the MVPs. Who do you think? Hold on. Who's in the running for the MVP in the NL? I see. Is Paul Goldschmidt in there?
It's gonna be. I think it'll be Stanton.
So yeah, it probably could be Stanton. And then in the AL, I want to say the East and the West, but it doesn't work that way in football or baseball. It seems so geographically easy to do that. It's Aaron Judge and who is the other one? I'm forgetting.
Altuve.
And Altuve, yeah. I think Altuve will end up winning it just because he was more consistent throughout, and they did win the World Series, and he was such a big part of that.
Does the voting happen after?
Yeah.
Oh, that's dumb in my opinion because it's a regular season award, so like it should happen before. Personal opinion.
So who do you think should win?
As much as I hate to say it, as with my hatred for Yankees and all of their fans, trying to be unbiased, I'd have to go Judge.
I would honestly.
But trying to be biased, I have to go Andrew Benintendi.
Honestly, being biased towards the Yankees, it's almost as much as I love Aaron Judge, like just going from the highs and lows and the inconsistency of his season, so many strikeouts where sometimes he would go up there and he'd be like A-Rod towards the end of his career where he would just be an automatic out, even though you knew one swing in the back could change the game. I would have to go Altuve. I'm sorry, Aaron Judge. If you're watching, well, one, that's fantastic. Fantastic for us. Not so much for you because I don't know why you're wasting your time watching us on a Wednesday night. But I'm sorry, I would not pick you to win MVP. You were just not quite consistent enough. Jose Altuve was, and
I mean,
hey, for someone like me who is short and like barely 5'5", Jose Altuve is like my god and my role model. That short people can be amazing.
Yeah,
So
Altuve has that storyline for
I mean,
sure.
he hit close to 350. I mean, how can you like?
who hits three? When I was looking at in like September, I saw his season average was like 340, and I thought I was seeing things. Nobody has hit that in a season, anything like that I can remember.
Well,
It's unbelievable, and
Miguel
honestly, that alone
Cabrera.
might be good enough. It's not like he just hit for base hits. He drove in runs. He had home runs. He was crazy. All right, good enough for the MLB. NBA, Spentano, we have 5 minutes left.
We have 5 minutes left.
We have
That's
5 minutes
that's not
left.
enough time.
Well, you know what? We'll have to come back for next
It
week.
took me like 15 minutes to explain the entire LeBron Cavs or LeBron Knicks Arthur memes to my parents.
Well, we don't have to go into that.
Just anything?
Talk about one of the Cavs and the Celtics. Just talk about those two teams because I think those are the most interesting teams at the moment for different reasons.
Well, I think Brad Stevens is really, really emerging as a great coach. And you're kind of seeing on Cleveland that Jay Crowder's not exactly what he was broadcasted as in Boston. As ESPN ranked him the 38th best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
He's been doing really bad. And it's got a lot to do with not being in Brad Stevens' system and being in Ty Lue's system, which I don't
What
know
is the Ty Lue system?
Yeah,
Is that
I
the
don't know if you
LeBron
call it
system?
I don't know if you call it a system, but he has just been playing really poorly. And Avery Bradley's a great individual player, and he's really elevated the Pistons, so I don't think that example really works there. But Jay Crowder is not doing very well outside of the Brad Stevens system. And, like, they're just winning games that they should win, but then they're also missing, like, key players, and then I think it's just a good string or a good stretch of games, but it 100% ends Thursday. There's no way they're beating the Warriors. I'm just saying it right now. No way. Warriors don't want to be a part of that. They want to be the people that like punked them, so they're actually going to care this game.
All right.
Watch for the third quarter because that's the thing. The Warriors, they like let the first half be interesting, and then the third quarter, especially in away games, I think they had a little away stretch. While teams are like, well, the fans aren't really in their seats, so the arena is not really as energetic as it is in the first quarter. Sometimes they just go off. Oh shoot! I unplugged my headphones on accident.
Oh.
Oh, and they just go off, and then they just bury teams. It's very sad to see.
Yeah. Yeah, they like to give the opposing team a little bit of hope come the first half, and then they just snatch it right back out of the halftime locker room.
Yep.
All right. I just like to add before we go to Matt and we close up, the Knicks are about 500 now. They started off 0-3 and dismal. Now, again, I don't think they're going to be anything really that good. They've really shown no reason to be. They've just been they've been teetering, and it'd be a miracle if they were able to finish the season 500. Now, again, we are like an eighth through the season here. This isn't. It's just surprising now that they've had this little early season success. But hey, Porzingis is the real deal. Do not tell me otherwise. He is the real deal. We'll see what Ninakina, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
No, it's Nalikina. I thought it was Nilakina. It's Nalikina, apparently.
All right, it's Nalikina, so I take French, and that does me no good on Under the Hood. All right, great. Tim Hardaway Jr., I guess he's been okay, even though they paid him $16 million a year. I don't see the need for that.
I like that signing. I don't know why.
But for $16 million a year, no.
$16 million a year in like today's NBA money that's
fine. It's like $5 million 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That's good money. No, but Porzingis is also now the new king of flopping. If you watch any Knicks games in like the fourth quarter, I think Dwight Howard was just like Dwight Howard would run near him and Porzingis would just fall down, and then Mike Breen would lose his mind about how Porzingis was getting shoved. But he's not getting the calls, so it's not really like it's working. But I just don't want him to get a reputation as a flopper because I feel like that's going to tarnish his like
Reputation.
I don't want to use the word reputation twice, but I guess reputation as like this lovable guy that plays in New York that everyone loves, because then people are just opposing fans are going to get annoyed when he just starts flopping everywhere.
Yeah. All right, Matt, wrap us up with whatever you want from the NBA quickly.
I can't believe the Pistons are good right now.
SVG. SVG.
Hey, he was an assistant coach at UVM in the 80s. Fun fact.
Of course you know that. Of course you know that.
And you don't know what Castleton is, but he was the head coach there. That was his first head coaching job, and that's like 40 minutes away from me. And it's a Division III school.
Okay.
Fun fact. Sorry to interrupt.
So, basically, the Pistons.
Don't
They
even know how to
may
explain
be
it.
firing on all cylinders, but they're going to wrap up our show. And SVG, honestly, watching just some of SVG's press conferences, whether they're before, after a game, or just like on off days, he's a quote machine. Like he will just, whether it's on basketball or just issues in the world, the guy is really interesting to listen to. As much as he may look like someone you don't want to like go near because he just has like that kind of scary look, SVG is really a great personality. So highly recommend checking some of his videos out on YouTube. Thank you for watching tonight. We're glad you stuck with us after we were gone for a month. We had plenty to talk about tonight. Hopefully we'll be back next week. It's a short week though with the holiday. If not, we'll be back the week after. Thank you for watching and have a great night.